20 years of marriage ended with a text message, but that was just the beginning of his nightmare. Evelyn Vaughn stood in the center of their penthouse suite at the Belmont Hotel, surrounded by 200 white roses, champagne on ice, and a custom-made dress that cost more than most people's cars. Her phone buzzed. "Cameron, don't wait up. Business dinner ran late. We'll celebrate tomorrow." Tomorrow, their 20th wedding anniversary, and Cameron couldn't even make it through dinner. Evelyn's fingers trembled as she typed back a response, then deleted it. Then typed again. Deleted again. What was there to say? She'd spent 6 months planning this surprise, flying in from their estate in the Hamptons, booking the exact suite where he'd proposed, even recreating the menu from their wedding reception. She looked at herself in the mirror, 42 years old, and she still turned heads. The dress, a sleek midnight blue silk that hugged every curve, had been custom-fitted just last week. Her dark hair cascaded over bare shoulders, and those green eyes that Cameron once said could stop time itself stared back at her with something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Suspicion. No, not suspicion. Certainty. Because this wasn't the first business dinner. It wasn't even the 10th. Over the past 8 months, Cameron had become a ghost in their marriage, present in body when convenient, absent in every way that mattered. Evelyn poured herself a glass of champagne, walked to the window, and gazed out at the Manhattan skyline. Somewhere out there, her husband was lying to her. The question wasn't if anymore. The question was, who was she? Her phone rang. Not Cameron, her best friend, Diane. "Tell me you're not sitting alone in that hotel room," Diane said, without preamble. "I'm enjoying a very expensive bottle of champagne by myself, if that's what you're asking." "Evelyn, he's not coming, Diane. I know he's not coming." There was a long pause on the other end. Then, "Do you want me to tell you what I know, or do you want to keep pretending?" Evelyn's heart stopped. "What do you know?" "Meet me at Rothschild's. Now. And Eve, don't change out of that dress. You're going to need the armor." Rothschild's was the kind of restaurant where senators made deals and CEOs made confessions. Evelyn found Diane in a corner booth, her usually cheerful face grave with the weight of secrets. Diane slid a manila folder across the table. "I hired an investigator 3 months ago," Diane said quietly, "after I saw Cameron at the Azure Club with her. I wasn't sure if I should tell you, but then you mentioned this anniversary surprise, and I couldn't let you sit in that hotel room alone anymore." Evelyn's hands hovered over the folder. Once she opened it, there was no going back. The careful balance she'd maintained, the denial, the hope, the belief that maybe she was wrong, would shatter. She opened it. The first photo was taken outside a boutique hotel in Soho. Cameron, his hand on the small of a woman's back, leading her inside. The woman was young, mid-20s, with long blonde hair and legs that seemed to go on forever. She wore designer everything, including the diamond bracelet that Evelyn recognized immediately. She'd seen it in Cameron's credit card statement last month. He'd said it was for a client. The next photo showed them at a restaurant, intimate, his hand covering hers across the table, the kind of touch that spoke of months, not moments. Another photo, them entering his private office building at midnight. Another, a weekend trip to Napa Valley. The same weekend, Cameron had told her He was in London for business. Her name is Sienna Cross, Diane said softly. 26, former Instagram influencer turned brand consultant. They've been seeing each other for almost a year. A year. Evelyn's vision blurred, but she refused to cry. Not here, not yet. There's more, Diane continued, and her voice cracked with something that made Evelyn look up sharply. Page 7. Evelyn flipped through the documents. Hotel receipts, credit card statements, text message records that Cameron clearly thought were private. And then she reached page 7. It was a real estate document. Penthouse purchase agreement. 432 Riverside Drive, Unit 3401 buyer, Cameron Vaughn, occupant, Sienna Cross. Date of purchase, 6 months ago, he'd bought her an apartment, a $4.2 million penthouse overlooking the Hudson River. But that wasn't what made Evelyn's blood turn to ice. At the bottom of the page, paper clipped to the contract, was another document. A handwritten letter from Cameron's lawyer, dated 2 weeks ago. Cameron, per your request, I've drafted the preliminary divorce papers. Given the prenuptial agreement Evelyn signed, the settlement should be straightforward. She'll receive the standard terms outlined, nothing more. I'll have everything ready for your signature by next month. As discussed, we'll position this as an amicable separation to minimize media attention. Once finalized, you'll be free to move forward with your plans. Evelyn read it twice, 3 times. He wasn't just cheating, he was leaving, and he'd been planning it for months, maybe longer, without saying a word to her. Eve, Diane reached across the table. Say something. Evelyn carefully closed the folder, placed it in her purse, and finished her champagne in one long swallow. When she finally spoke, her voice was eerily calm. How much do we know about Sienna Cross? Diane blinked. What? Everything in this folder is about what Cameron's doing. I want to know who she is, where she came from, what she wants. Evelyn met her friend's eyes, and for the first time that night, she smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. Because if my husband thinks he can trade 20 years of marriage for a younger model and walk away clean, he's about to learn a very expensive lesson. What are you going to do? Evelyn stood, smoothing down her dress. I'm going to get what I'm owed, and I'm going to make sure that when this is over, Cameron Vaughn wishes he'd never heard the name Sienna Cross. But Evelyn had no idea that Sienna wasn't just some random mistress. She was a woman with her own agenda, one that would destroy them all. Evelyn didn't go home that night. Instead, she checked into a different hotel under her mother's maiden name and sat in the darkness with Diane's folder spread across the bed like evidence at a crime scene. Every photo, every receipt, every text message was a tiny knife wound. But Evelyn refused to bleed. She'd spent 20 years building a life with Cameron. They'd met at a charity gala when she was a junior art curator, and he was a rising star in commercial real estate. Back then, he'd been hungry, ambitious, and utterly captivated by her. He used to say that Evelyn was the only person who could make him forget about business, the only thing he wanted more than success. They'd built an empire together, while Cameron expanded Vaughn Development into one of the most powerful real estate firms on the East Coast. Evelyn had become one of the art world's most influential curators, with connections that opened doors even Cameron's billions couldn't touch. But somewhere along the way, Cameron had stopped seeing her as a partner. He'd started seeing her as obsolete. At 3 a.m., Evelyn made a decision. She picked up her phone and dialed a number she'd never thought she'd use. Rhys Donovan speaking. Rhys Donovan was a lawyer, but not the kind who handled divorces for desperate housewives. She was the kind who made billionaires sweat in depositions and turned prenups into paper shields. If you wanted to go to war in a courtroom, Rhys was your nuclear option. Ms. Donovan, this is Evelyn Vaughn. I need your help. There was a pause, and then a low chuckle. Evelyn Vaughn, I've been waiting for this call for 6 years. Excuse me? Your husband tried to poach one of my associates back in 2019, offered him triple salary to help structure a development deal that would have skirted some very inconvenient zoning laws. When my associate declined, Cameron tried to bury his career. Another pause. I don't forget things like that. So yes, Mrs. Vaughn, I'll help you, and I'm going to enjoy every second of it. They met at Rhys's office at dawn, a sleek space in Midtown with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked Central Park. Rhys was exactly what Evelyn expected, sharp-eyed, impeccably dressed, with the kind of smile that made opposing counsel reconsider their life choices. Evelyn handed over Diane's folder. Rhys spent 20 minutes reviewing every page in silence, making notes in crimson ink. Finally, she looked up. Your prenup is garbage. I know. No, you don't understand. It's terrible. Whoever drafted this for Cameron should have been disbarred. There are at least 7 clauses that wouldn't hold up under scrutiny, and that's before we even get into the marital asset commingling issues. Evelyn leaned forward. Explain. The prenup assumes a clean division of assets. Cameron keeps his business, you keep your trust fund, and whatever personal assets you brought into the marriage. But here's the problem. Over 20 years, you two have entangled everything. Your art collection, half of it was purchased with joint accounts. That estate in the Hamptons, your name's on the deed. The charitable foundation you run together, you're a co-founder with equal decision-making power. Rhys pulled out another document. And then there's this beautiful little clause on page 12. In the event of marital infidelity, the aggrieved party shall be entitled to renegotiate settlement terms. Cameron's lawyer probably thought that would protect him if you ever cheated, but guess what? It works both ways. A slow smile spread across Evelyn's face. How much are we talking about? If we play this right, conservatively, 40% of his total assets. That's roughly $800 million, but doubt if we can prove he used marital funds to support his affair. And honey, that penthouse purchase alone is a smoking gun. We could push for more, much more. And if he fights, then we drag this out. We subpoena every email, every text, every credit card statement from the past 5 years. We depose his business partners, his employees, his mistress. We make this so publicly ugly that his investors start getting nervous. Vaughn Development's brand is built on Cameron's image as a family man, a philanthropist who gives back to the community. What happens when the world finds out he's been keeping a 26-year-old mistress in a multi-million-dollar love nest? Evelyn sat back, her mind racing. This wasn't just about money. This was about power, control, making sure that when Cameron walked away from their marriage, he'd remember the cost of betrayal for the rest of his life. There's one more thing, Rhys said, her expression darkening. I did some digging on Sienna Cross this morning. You need to see this. She turned her laptop around. On the screen was an article from a Miami Society blog, dated 3 years ago. The headline read, "Rising influencer Sienna Cross at the center of financial scandal." Evelyn leaned closer, reading. Sienna had been engaged to a Miami real estate investor named Saul Parker, a man worth roughly $50 million. They'd met when she was 23, and within 6 months, she'd moved into his mansion and started appearing at all his business events. According to the article, Saul had been completely besotted, even putting her name on several of his properties. Then, 18 months into their relationship, Saul discovered that Sienna had been systematically draining his accounts. She'd convinced him to make her a co-signer on his business accounts for convenience, then funneled over $3 million into offshore investments in her name. By the time Saul realized what was happening, Sienna had disappeared, along with the money. Saul tried to press charges, but Sienna's lawyer, a very expensive one, the article noted, had argued that everything was a gift and that Saul was simply a scorned ex trying to punish her for leaving. The case was settled out of court, with Saul forced to eat most of his losses to avoid further public humiliation. Sienna had vanished from Miami's social scene after that, until she reappeared in New York a year later. With a new name, she'd been Sienna Clark in Miami, a carefully curated Instagram presence, and a strategy for landing her next wealthy target, Cameron. Evelyn's hands clenched into fists. "She's a con artist." "A very good one," Reese agreed. "The question is, does Cameron know? Or does he think he's fallen in love with a sweet young woman who just happens to appreciate his success?" "He doesn't know," Evelyn said with certainty. "Cameron's brilliant in business, but he's always had a blind spot when it comes to flattery. If Sienna's been playing the role of the adoring girlfriend who thinks he's a genius, he'd eat it up." "Then we have two options," Reese said. "Option 1. We tell Cameron what we know about Sienna, blow up his affair, and negotiate a settlement while he's vulnerable and embarrassed. Option 2. We let this play out. We watch Sienna get her hooks in deeper, and when Cameron finally realizes what she is, or better yet, when she makes her move on his money, we step in with all the evidence we've been collecting." Evelyn was quiet for a long moment, weighing the options. Option 1 was clean, quick. She could end this nightmare in a matter of weeks. But option 2 was justice. "We wait," Evelyn said finally. "We let Sienna dig Cameron's grave, and when the time is right, we bury them both." If you're enjoying this story of revenge and redemption, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because this tale is about to get a whole lot darker. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Evelyn returned home the next morning as if nothing had happened. The Vaughn estate in the Hamptons was a sprawling 15-acre property with gardens that had been featured in Architectural Digest and a main house that could comfortably host 50 guests. It was beautiful, serene, and as of yesterday, it felt like a prison. Cameron's car was in the driveway. Evelyn found him in his study, on a conference call, looking exhausted. When he saw her, he mouthed, "Sorry," and held up 5 fingers. 5 more minutes. She nodded graciously and went to change. When she returned, Cameron was off the phone, pouring himself a scotch, even though it was barely 10 a.m. "Eve, about last night." "Don't." She held up a hand, her voice warm but weary. "I know how demanding work has been. Diane told me You've been dealing with the Harbour Point development falling through. We can celebrate our anniversary another time." The relief on Cameron's face was almost comical. He'd been bracing for a fight, and here she was, being the understanding wife. "You're amazing," he said, crossing the room to kiss her forehead. "I don't deserve you." "No, you really don't," Evelyn thought, but she smiled and said, "We're a team, Cameron. We always have been." She watched him relax into the lie, and it took everything in her not to throw her drink in his face. Over the next 2 weeks, Evelyn played her role flawlessly. She attended charity events on Cameron's arm, smiling for cameras and charming donors. She hosted a dinner party for his business associates, orchestrating a menu that had everyone raving. She even surprised him at his office one afternoon with his favorite lunch, playing the devoted wife so convincingly that his assistant gushed about how lucky he was. All the while, Reese's team was working behind the scenes. They tracked every dollar Cameron spent on Sienna, every hotel room, every piece of jewelry, every romantic weekend getaway he claimed was a business trip. They built a timeline of the affair that was so detailed, so ironclad, that even Cameron's expensive lawyers would have no defense. But more importantly, they were digging into Sienna. "We found her real name," Reese said, during one of their secret meetings at a private club where Evelyn knew Cameron would never go. "Sienna Cross is actually Simone Kowalski. She grew up in a trailer park outside of Reno. Smart kid, actually. Got a full scholarship to UNLV for marketing. But she dropped out junior year after she met a local casino owner who was, shall we say, very generous with his affections." Reese slid a file across the table. After the casino owner, there was a tech entrepreneur in San Francisco, a hedge fund manager in Chicago, and then Saul Parker in Miami. Each relationship lasted about 18 months. Each man ended up significantly poorer when she left, and each time she disappeared before any real legal consequences could stick. "So she's a professional," Evelyn murmured, scanning the documents. "She's a predator, and she's very, very good at it." Reese pulled out another photo, Sienna at a boutique, trying on a ring. Not just any ring, an engagement ring. "This was taken 4 days ago. We think Cameron's planning to propose." Evelyn's stomach dropped. "How long until the divorce papers are filed?" "Based on what his lawyer said in that letter, probably within the next month. He'll wait until after the Grayson Hotel deal closes. That's his biggest project this year, and he won't want any distractions. Once that's done, he'll serve you papers and act like this is all very civilized. And then he'll marry her." "If she lets him get that far," Reese said darkly. "But here's what I'm thinking. Sienna's playing a long game. She knows Cameron's worth over $2 billion. Why settle for jewelry and a penthouse when she could potentially get half of everything in a divorce? My guess, she's planning to marry him, wait just long enough to establish herself, and then take him for everything he's got." Evelyn laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "So Cameron's leaving me for a woman who's going to destroy him. Poetic, isn't it?" Reese grinned. "But here's where it gets interesting. What if we could accelerate Sienna's timeline? What if we could push her into making her move before Cameron's ready? If we play this right, we could turn them against each other. And while they're tearing each other apart, you'll be in position to take what's rightfully yours." "How?" Reese's smile turned wicked. By giving Sienna exactly what she wants, access to Cameron's money, and then making sure he finds out about it in the worst possible way. The annual Vaughn Foundation Gala was the social event of the season, a black tie affair that raised millions for arts education programs across the country. Evelyn had founded the charity 15 years ago, and it had become her legacy, separate from Cameron's business empire. This year's gala was going to be special. Evelyn spent weeks planning every detail. The venue, the Metropolitan Club, with its soaring ceilings and old-world elegance. The guest list, 400 of New York's most powerful people, politicians, CEOs, celebrities, and media magnates. The entertainment, a private performance by a Grammy-winning violinist, and the surprise guest, Sienna Cross. "You're inviting her?" Diane had asked when Evelyn explained the plan. "Are you insane?" "I'm strategic," Evelyn corrected. "Cameron thinks I don't know about her. If I invite her to the gala, publicly, as a supporter of the arts, it accomplishes two things. First, it makes Cameron panic. He'll spend the entire night terrified that his two worlds are about to collide. Second, it gives me a chance to meet her, to see what I'm dealing with. And if Cameron figures out that you know," Evelyn's smile was ice cold, "then let him sweat. Let him wonder how much I know and what I'm planning to do about it. Fear is a weapon, Diane, and I'm about to become very well armed." The invitation went out on cream-colored cardstock with gold embossing. The Vaughn Foundation cordially invites Ms. Sienna Cross to the 15th Annual Arts Education Gala. Your support of our mission to provide access to arts education for underserved communities is greatly appreciated. It was delivered by courier to her penthouse. According to Reese's surveillance team, Sienna had stared at the invitation for a full 10 minutes before calling Cameron in a panic. Evelyn could only imagine that conversation. The night of the gala. Evelyn wore a custom Valentino gown in deep emerald green, a color that made her eyes look like gemstones and her skin glow like porcelain. Her hair was swept up in an elegant chignon, with diamond earrings that had belonged to her grandmother, catching the light. She looked like old money, power, and untouchable grace. Cameron, standing beside her in the reception line, looked like he might vomit. "You seem tense," Evelyn murmured as they greeted guests. "Are you feeling all right?" "I'm fine," he said through clenched teeth. "Just a long day." "Well, try to relax. Tonight's important." She squeezed his hand, a gesture that to everyone else looked affectionate, but that she knew would feel like a threat. "I've invited some new supporters. I think you'll be surprised by some of our guests." Cameron's face went pale. Sienna arrived fashionably late, which Evelyn had expected. She wore a red dress that was stunning and entirely inappropriate for a charity gala, cut too low, slit too high, designed to draw every eye in the room. Her blonde hair fell in perfect waves, and she moved with the confidence of a woman who knew she was beautiful and expected everyone else to know it too. Evelyn watched from across the ballroom as Sienna's eyes found Cameron. Watched as Sienna's confident smile faltered just for a moment when she saw Cameron standing next to his wife. And then Evelyn did something that would be talked about in New York society circles for months. She walked directly up to Sienna. "Ms. Cross?" Evelyn extended her hand, her smile warm and genuine. "Evelyn Vaughn, thank you so much for coming tonight. I've heard wonderful things about your work in brand consulting. Sienna's handshake was limp with shock. Mrs. Vaughn, I thank you for the invitation. Your foundation does incredible work. Please, call me Evelyn, and you must let me introduce you to some people. I think you'll find tonight's crowd very connected. She linked her arm through Sienna's as if they were old friends. Come, let me show you around. Behind them, Cameron looked like he might pass out. Evelyn spent the next hour parading Sienna around the gala, introducing her to everyone who mattered. She made sure photographers captured them together. She laughed at Sienna's attempts at small talk. She complimented her dress, while subtly noting to a journalist that it was bold for a charity event. And all the while, she studied her enemy. Sienna was good. Evelyn had to give her that. She knew how to smile, how to make conversation, how to make men feel important and women feel non-threatened. But there were cracks in the performance. Sienna's eyes kept darting to Cameron. Her laugh was slightly too loud, and when Evelyn mentioned casually that she and Cameron had been married for 20 years, Sienna's champagne glass had trembled in her hand. You must meet my husband, Evelyn said finally, guiding Sienna toward where Cameron stood, talking to a group of investors. Cameron, darling, this is Sienna Cross. I was just telling her about the new education program we're launching in Brooklyn. Cameron's face was a mask of forced calm. Ms. Cross, nice to meet you. Mr. Vaughn, Sienna said, and even though she kept her voice professional, Evelyn saw the electricity between them, the unspoken language of lovers forced to pretend they were strangers. It was almost sad. Almost. Sienna's interested in getting more involved with the foundation, Evelyn continued, her voice bright. Perhaps we could set up a meeting next week. I'd love to hear your ideas for how we could expand our reach to younger demographics. Cameron always says, I need to think more about social media strategy. I'd love that, Sienna managed. Wonderful. Cameron, make sure she has your card. I know you two will work beautifully together. The look Cameron shot Evelyn could have melted steel. Later that night, after the last guest had left and the ballroom was empty except for cleaning crews, Cameron finally exploded. What the hell was that? Evelyn was removing her jewelry, her expression serene. What was what? You know exactly what I'm talking about. Sienna Cross. Why did you invite her? How do you even know her? She's a supporter of the arts, Cameron. I invite lots of people to our events. Evelyn met his eyes in the mirror. Why? Is there a problem? No, He struggled for words. It seemed odd. That's all. Odd that I'm expanding our donor base, or odd that you seem so uncomfortable around her. Evelyn turned to face him fully. You've been so distant lately, so distracted. I thought maybe if I brought in some fresh energy, some new perspectives, it might help you reconnect with the foundation. With me. The guilt on Cameron's face was palpable. I'm sorry, he said quietly. You're right. I've been buried in work. I'll do better. I know you will. Evelyn smiled and kissed his cheek. That's why I love you. You always try to do better. She walked away, leaving Cameron standing alone in their bedroom, wondering if his wife suspected anything or if he was just paranoid. Evelyn knew the answer, and she was just getting started. Don't go anywhere, because the real game is about to begin. Make sure you're subscribed and have those notifications on, because what happens next will blow your mind. 3 days after the gala, Evelyn received an unexpected call. "Mrs. Vaughn, this is Sienna Cross. I was wondering if we could meet to discuss foundation opportunities, perhaps for coffee." Evelyn smiled into the phone. "Of course, Sienna. I'd love that. How about Thursday at Café Noir? Say 2 p.m. Perfect. Thank you." After she hung up, Evelyn immediately called Reese. She took the bait. "Of course she did," Reese said. "Sienna's curious. She wants to know if you suspect anything. She's probably terrified right now, wondering if the gala was a power move or just coincidence." "What do I tell her?" "The truth," Reese said, "or at least a version of it. Let her think you're a lonely, neglected wife who's desperately trying to save her marriage. Make her believe you're clueless and vulnerable. The more comfortable she gets, the sloppier she'll become." Café Noir was a small, elegant spot in the West Village, the kind of place where people went to have conversations they didn't want overheard. Evelyn arrived first, choosing a table in the back corner. Sienna arrived exactly on time, dressed more conservatively than at the gala. Understated designer clothes, minimal jewelry, careful makeup. She was playing the role of serious professional woman, and Evelyn had to admire the transformation. "Thank you for meeting me," Sienna said as she sat down. "I know how busy you must be." "Not as busy as I'd like," Evelyn said, with a carefully crafted wistfulness. "The foundation keeps me occupied, but, well, I suppose I'm at a stage in life where I'm trying to figure out what comes next." Sienna's eyes sharpened with interest. "What do you mean?" Evelyn sighed, stirring her coffee. "Can I be honest with you, Sienna? I know we just met, but there was something about you at the gala. You seem like someone who understands what it's like to reinvent yourself." "I try," Sienna said cautiously. "The truth is, I've been feeling rather invisible lately. Cameron's so consumed with work, we barely talk anymore. And I look around at my life, this beautiful, privileged life, and I wonder if I've become more of a fixture than a person. Does that make sense?" "It does," Sienna said, and for a moment, something almost like sympathy flickered across her face. "I think a lot of women feel that way. Do you have someone in your life, Sienna? A partner?" The question hung in the air like a loaded gun. "Not currently," Sienna said carefully. "I'm focused on my career right now." "Smart. Men can be so complicated." Evelyn leaned forward. "Can I tell you something? Sometimes I wonder if Cameron even sees me anymore. He used to look at me like I was the most fascinating woman in the world. Now I'm just there, part of the furniture." She watched Sienna's reaction carefully. There, just for a second, a flash of something. Guilt, triumph, both. "I'm sure that's not true," Sienna said, but her voice lacked conviction. "You're kind to say so." Evelyn sat back. "Anyway, I didn't mean to burden you with my marital problems. Tell me about yourself. What brought you to New York?" And just like that, Evelyn had flipped the script. Now, Sienna was the one being studied, analyzed, dissected. They talked for over an hour. Sienna spun a carefully crafted story about her past, vague enough to avoid scrutiny, polished enough to sound authentic. She talked about difficult, previous relationships, her passion for helping brands connect with consumers, her dream of one day starting her own consulting firm. It was all lies, of course, or at least heavily edited versions of the truth. But Evelyn played along, nodding sympathetically asking questions that made Sienna feel understood. By the time they parted ways, Sienna was visibly relaxed, probably convinced that Evelyn was exactly what she appeared to be, a lonely, slightly desperate woman who posed no threat whatsoever. "We should do this again," Evelyn said warmly. "It's nice to have someone to talk to. Sometimes I feel like all my friends are Cameron's friends, if that makes sense." "I'd like that," Sienna said, and she actually sounded sincere. As Evelyn walked away, she allowed herself a small smile. Reese had been right. The easiest way to destroy your enemy was to make them think they'd already won. Over the next month, Evelyn and Sienna met for coffee 3 more times. With each meeting, Evelyn carefully revealed more about her marriage, how Cameron had become distant, how she suspected he might be losing interest, how she'd been thinking about what her life would look like if they divorced. "The prenup is terrible," Evelyn confided during their 4th meeting. "My lawyer looked at it years ago and said I'd be lucky to walk away with anything beyond what I brought into the marriage. Cameron's lawyers made sure of that." Sienna's eyes gleamed. "That doesn't seem fair. You've been married for 20 years. You've built his social connections, managed his image." "I know, but that's not how the law sees it, apparently." Evelyn shook her head sadly. "Sometimes I wonder if I should just accept that this phase of my life is ending and try to find some grace in letting go." She watched Sienna absorb this information, practically seeing the gears turning in her head. If Evelyn was out of the picture, and if Cameron was as wealthy as everyone knew he was, and if Evelyn's prenup was truly as bad as she claimed, Sienna would have a clear path to everything she wanted. Meanwhile, Reese's team was working overtime. They discovered that Sienna had been quietly networking with Cameron's business associates, positioning herself as a consultant on several of his upcoming projects. She'd somehow convinced Cameron to introduce her to his banker, his accountant, and his wealth manager, all under the guise of helping her establish her own consulting business. In reality, she was mapping out his entire financial empire. "She's not just planning to marry him," Reese said during one of their briefings. "She's planning to take control. Look at this. She's been researching asset protection strategies, offshore account regulations, and community property laws. This woman's doing her homework." "When do you think she'll make her move?" Evelyn asked. "Soon. Cameron's getting ready to serve you divorce papers. My source in his lawyer's office confirmed they've been finalized. Once you're officially separated, Sienna will probably push for a quick engagement. She'll want to marry him while he's emotionally vulnerable and before he has time to think too clearly about prenups or asset protection. And then she'll wait. Maybe a year, maybe 18 months. Just long enough to establish that the marriage is legitimate. And then she'll either divorce him and go for half of everything, or—" Reese paused. "Or she'll find another way to get control of his money." "What do you mean?" Reese pulled out another file. "Sienna's been researching power of attorney documents, medical directives, trust structures. If I didn't know better, I'd say she's planning for a scenario where Cameron might be incapacitated." Evelyn's blood ran cold. "You think she'd hurt him?" "I don't know, but I think she's considering every possible angle for getting his money. And some of those angles are very, very dark." That night, Evelyn did something she'd been avoiding for weeks. She went to Cameron's study and searched his desk. She knew it was a violation of whatever trust remained between them. She knew it made her no better than him in some ways. But she also knew that if she didn't find out exactly what Cameron was planning, she'd be walking into divorce proceedings blind. It took her 20 minutes to find what she was looking for, hidden in a locked drawer that Cameron thought she didn't have the key to. She'd had a copy made years ago, back when trust still existed between them. The divorce papers were even worse than she'd imagined. Cameron's lawyers had structured everything to minimize her settlement. According to the documents, she'd receive a lump sum of $5 million, barely enough to maintain her lifestyle for a few years. The Hamptons estate, which was mortgaged to the hilt and would bankrupt her in maintenance costs and nothing else. No stake in Vaughn Development, no share of their investment portfolios, no access to the art collection they'd built together. 20 years of marriage, and Cameron thought she was worth $5 million, but it was the addendum that made Evelyn's hands shake with rage. In the interest of maintaining privacy and protecting all parties involved, Mrs. Vaughn agrees to a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement prohibiting her from discussing the marriage, the reasons for divorce, or any aspects of Mr. Vaughn's personal or professional life with media, publishers, or public forums. Violation of this NDA will result in immediate forfeiture of all settlement assets and legal penalties up to $50 million. He wanted to silence her, to make sure that even if she wanted to expose his affair, his lies, his betrayal, she couldn't without losing everything. Evelyn carefully photographed every page, sent the images to Reese, and put everything back exactly as she'd found it. Then she walked to the bar, poured herself a drink, and allowed herself exactly 5 minutes to cry. After that, she wiped her tears, fixed her makeup, and made a decision. Cameron wanted to play hardball. Fine. She'd show him what hardball really looked like. The next morning, Evelyn received an unexpected visitor. Jackson Reeves stood at her door, looking every bit the investigative journalist he'd been, before retiring to write tell-all books about New York's elite. He'd exposed corruption, affairs, and financial scandals that had toppled empires. He was also Cameron's worst nightmare, the one journalist who'd tried for years to find dirt on Vaughn Development and had been systematically blocked at every turn. "Mr. Reeves," Evelyn said, surprised. "What can I do for you?" "I think it's more about what I can do for you, Mrs. Vaughn. May I come in?" They sat in the conservatory, surrounded by Evelyn's orchid collection. Jackson declined tea and got straight to the point. "I know about Sienna Cross. I know about the affair. And I know that Cameron's planning to divorce you while giving you scraps and forcing you to sign an NDA that would prevent you from ever telling your side of the story." Evelyn kept her expression neutral. "That's quite a story, Mr. Reeves, but I'm not sure why you're telling me this." "Because I've been investigating Cameron for 15 years, and he's always been too smart, too careful, too protected by expensive lawyers to touch. But now he's made a mistake. He's let his guard down with a woman who's very likely a con artist, and he's about to blow up his marriage in a way that could finally expose some of the questionable business practices that Vaughn Development has engaged in over the years. I'm not interested in helping you write a hit piece on my husband. I'm not asking you to." Jackson leaned forward. "I'm offering you something better. I'm offering you leverage. See, I've been investigating Sienna Cross too, and I've found some very interesting things. Things that neither you nor Cameron know about yet. Evelyn's interest sharpened, such as the fact that Sienna Cross isn't working alone. She has a partner, a man named Derek Castellano. He's the one who masterminds the cons. Sienna's the face, the seductress, but Derek's the brains. He finds the targets, researches their vulnerabilities, and plans the extraction strategies. Jackson pulled out a series of photos. They showed Sienna meeting with a man in his 40s. Handsome, well-dressed, clearly comfortable with money. In some photos, they were clearly intimate. In others, they appeared to be having intense, strategic conversations. Derek and Sienna have been partners for 8 years. Every wealthy man Sienna's gotten close to, Derek's been in the background. They split the profits 60-40, with Derek taking the larger share. And here's the kicker. They're already planning their exit strategy with Cameron. He pulled out more documents, encrypted emails that had been painstakingly decoded, financial records showing shell companies and offshore accounts, and a timeline that showed Sienna and Derek had been researching Cameron for over a year before Sienna accidentally met him at a business conference. They're planning to take him for at least 50 million, Jackson continued. Maybe more if they can pull off the long con. And here's what makes this beautiful. If you let this play out, if you let Cameron divorce you, marry Sienna, and then get absolutely destroyed by her and Derek, you'll be in the perfect position to swoop in and pick up the pieces. Or better yet, to make sure Cameron never recovers from the humiliation. Evelyn studied the documents carefully. Why are you giving this to me? What do you want in exchange? When this all blows up, and it will blow up, I want exclusive rights to the story. The whole story. Cameron's affair, Sienna's con, the divorce, everything. I won't publish anything without your approval, and I'll let you read every word before it goes to print. But in exchange, you give me complete access. Deal? Evelyn thought for a long moment. Working with Jackson was dangerous. If Cameron found out, he could claim she'd been working to sabotage him, which could hurt her in the divorce proceedings. But the information Jackson had was too valuable to ignore, and the opportunity to not just win the divorce, but to utterly destroy Cameron's reputation and ensure he paid for every lie, every betrayal. Deal, Evelyn said, but on one condition. We don't just expose Cameron, we expose Sienna and Derek too. If they think they can make a living destroying people's lives, they're about to learn what it feels like to be on the receiving end. Jackson's smile was shark-like. Mrs. Vaughn, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful partnership. Cameron served Evelyn with divorce papers on a Tuesday afternoon, exactly 3 weeks after the gala. He did it like a coward, having his lawyer deliver them to the Hamptons estate while he was conveniently out of town on business. Evelyn had been expecting them, of course, but actually holding the papers in her hands still felt like a punch to the gut. She called Reese immediately. He did it. Papers were just delivered. Perfect. Now here's what we do. You sign nothing. You engage with his lawyer, but stall. Tell them you need time to process, that you're emotionally devastated, whatever. Meanwhile, we file a counter-petition that will make his lawyer's head spin. What kind of counter-petition? One that argues the prenup is invalid due to duress and lack of full disclosure of assets at the time of signing. one that demands a forensic audit of all marital finances for the past 10 years, one that subpoenas records of every business expense Cameron's claimed, including that penthouse he bought for Sienna. We're going nuclear, Evelyn, and by the time we're done, Cameron's going to wish he'd just been honest with you from the start. The counterpetition was filed 2 days later. Cameron's lawyer called within hours, his voice tight with controlled anger. Mrs. Vaughn, my client is willing to be very generous in this divorce, but if you insist on making this difficult, we'll be forced to take a more aggressive approach. Evelyn, following Reese's script perfectly, kept her voice trembling and uncertain. I just don't understand why this is happening. Cameron won't even talk to me, won't even explain. Mrs. Vaughn, sometimes marriages simply run their course. Mr. Vaughn believes an amicable separation is in everyone's best interest. Amicable? He sent a stranger to deliver divorce papers. How is that amicable? Evelyn let her voice break convincingly. I gave him 20 years of my life. I built his social connections, managed his image, stood by him through every business crisis. And this is how he thanks me. With $5 million and a house I can't afford to maintain. The settlement offered is more than fair, according to the terms of your prenuptial agreement. A prenup I signed when I was 22 years old and terrified of losing him. I had no idea what I was signing. His lawyers rushed me through it, told me it was standard, told me I'd be taken care of. And now I find out I'm worth less to him than one of his build-in projects. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. What exactly are you asking for, Mrs. Vaughn? I'm asking for what I deserve. I'm asking for my lawyer to have time to review 20 years of our financial partnership. And I'm asking for my husband to show me the respect of explaining to my face why our marriage is over. Is that really too much to ask? Another pause. I'll speak with my client. That evening, Cameron called. Evelyn, what the hell are you doing? She let the hurt show in her voice. I'm trying to understand why you're throwing away 20 years without even talking to me first. We haven't been happy for a long time. You know that. I know you've been distant. I know you've been working constantly. But I thought that was temporary. I thought we were going through a rough patch. Evelyn took a shaky breath. Cameron, is there someone else? The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. No, Cameron said finally. There's no one else. I think we've grown apart. And I think it's time we both admitted it. The ease with which he lied took Evelyn's breath away. After everything, after 20 years of marriage, after all the promises and plans and shared dreams, he couldn't even give her the truth. Then prove it, Evelyn said quietly. Come home. Sit down with me. Explain what happened to us. And if you can look me in the eye and tell me this marriage is over, I'll sign your papers. But I deserve that much, Cameron. I deserve to hear it from you, not from a lawyer. She could practically hear him calculating, weighing his options. If he refused, it would look suspicious. If he agreed, he'd have to spend an evening lying to her face. All right, he said finally. I'll come home this weekend. We'll talk. Thank you, Evelyn whispered, and ended the call. Then she immediately called Reese. He's coming home this weekend. He's going to try to convince me to sign the papers. Perfect. By then, we'll have finished the forensic audit preliminary report. Let him come. Let him think he's convincing you. And then we'll show him exactly what we've found. Cameron arrived at the Hamptons estate on Friday evening, looking like a man about to face a firing squad. Evelyn had set the scene carefully. A quiet dinner in the conservatory, his favorite wine, soft lighting. Everything designed to remind him of better times while simultaneously making him feel guilty as hell. They made small talk through the first course, safe topics like the foundation, mutual friends, the upcoming summer season. But by the time the main course arrived, the pretense had worn thin. "Cameron," Evelyn said softly, "tell me the truth. What happened to us?" He set down his fork, his expression pained. "Eve, sometimes people just drift apart. It's not anyone's fault. But we didn't just drift. You left. Emotionally, physically. You checked out of this marriage months ago. Years ago, maybe." She met his eyes. "I need to know why. Not for the lawyers, not for the divorce. For me. I need to understand what I did wrong so I don't spend the rest of my life wondering." "You didn't do anything wrong," Cameron said, and for once, he sounded genuine. "You've been an incredible partner, a wonderful wife. But I've changed, Eve. The person I was when we got married, the person who needed what you gave, that person doesn't exist anymore. What do you need now?" Cameron looked away. "I don't know. Something different. Something that makes me feel alive again. Someone younger and more exciting," Evelyn thought bitterly. "Someone who doesn't remind you that you're 46 and running out of time to chase fantasies." But out loud she said, "I understand. I think I've been feeling the same way, like I'm playing a role instead of living a life." Cameron looked surprised. "Really? Really? Maybe we've both been holding on to something that stopped working a long time ago." Evelyn took a sip of wine. "Your lawyer mentioned a settlement. 5 million and the Hamptons house. Is that really what you think 20 years is worth?" "The prenup. I know what the prenup says. But Cameron, we both know that prenup doesn't account for everything we've built together. The foundation, the art collection, the social capital I've created for you. The doors I've opened that your money alone never could have opened. What are you asking for?" Evelyn took a deep breath, playing her role perfectly. "I'm asking for enough to start over. 20 million. The Soho loft. Half the art collection. And no NDA. I won't talk to the press about our marriage, I promise. But I won't sign away my right to tell my own story if I ever choose to." Cameron's jaw tightened. "That's considerably more than the prenup stipulates." The prenup was signed under duress by a 22-year-old who didn't know better. But I'm not asking you to fight about it in court. I'm asking you, as the man I've spent half my life with, to do the right thing, to let me walk away with dignity and enough resources to build a new life." She watched him calculate the cost, not just financially, but publicly. If he agreed to her terms, this could all be over quietly. If he fought, it would drag out, and there was always the risk that something messy might come to light. "I'll talk to my lawyer," Cameron said finally. "Thank you." Evelyn reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "I know this isn't easy for you either. I know you're not trying to hurt me, and I want you to know. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. I really do." The gratitude in Cameron's eyes was almost comical. He'd been bracing for screaming, for accusations, for tears and rage. Instead, Evelyn was being gracious, understanding, generous. He had no idea she was about to destroy him. After dinner, Cameron retreated to the guest room. Evelyn waited until she heard his door close, then went to her study and called Reese. "How'd it go?" Reese asked. "He's considering my counteroffer. 20 million, the Soho loft, half the art collection, no NDA. And you think he'll agree?" "I think he's so eager to move on with his life, with Sienna, that he'll pay whatever it takes to make this quick and quiet." "Good, because the forensic audit just came back. And Evelyn?" Reese's voice turned gleeful. "We've got him. Cameron's been moving money for years, hiding assets in shell companies, undervaluing properties, funneling cash into offshore accounts. If we take this to court, we can argue that the prenup is void due to fraudulent financial disclosure. We could get you 40%, maybe 50% of everything." Evelyn's heart raced. "How much are we talking about?" "Conservatively, 900 million, possibly over $1 billion. The number was staggering, life-changing. Enough to not just survive the divorce, but to build an empire of her own. "What do you want to do?" Reese asked. "Do we take the 20 million he's offering and walk away clean, or do we go for the throat?" Evelyn thought about Cameron's lies, about Sienna's manipulation, about 20 years of her life that had been casually discarded like yesterday's newspaper. "We go for the throat," Evelyn said. "But not yet. Let Cameron think I'm going to take the 20 million. Let him sign the papers, finalize the divorce, and then once he's legally separated from me and feeling safe, we release everything. The forensic audit, the evidence of his affair, all of it. That's playing a dangerous game. Once you're divorced, some of your legal leverage disappears. But my social leverage increases. Think about it. Once I'm officially the ex-wife, I can tell my story without it looking like I'm just trying to get money. I become the sympathetic Eve Tim, the woman who was betrayed and discarded. And when the public finds out Cameron was hiding assets while trying to lowball me in the divorce, he'll be crucified." Reese was quiet for a moment, then laughed. "You're terrifying. You know that?" "I'm learning," Evelyn said. "Now tell me about Sienna's partner, this Derek Castellano. What else do we know about him?" "Jackson's been digging deeper. Derek's more dangerous than we initially thought. He's not just a con artist, he's got connections to some very questionable people. Money laundering, fraud, possibly even blackmail. And here's the kicker. Derek's been pushing Sienna to accelerate the timeline with Cameron. He wants her to push for marriage as soon as Cameron's divorce is final." "How do you know?" "Jackson's been monitoring their communications. Sienna's resisting. She thinks moving too fast will make Cameron suspicious. But Derek's getting impatient. He's got debts to some very unpleasant people, and he needs a big score soon. There's talk of them going for a $100 million exit instead of the original $50 million. Evelyn felt a chill run down her spine. "What's their plan?" "We're not sure yet, but Jackson thinks they might be planning something more than just a divorce settlement. There's been chatter about insurance policies, about accidents, about killing him," Evelyn finished, her voice hollow. "We don't know that for sure," Reese said quickly, "but we're taking the threat seriously. Jackson's got a contact in the FBI who's interested in Derek's activities. If we can prove he's planning something criminal, we can bring in law enforcement." Evelyn's mind raced. If Sienna and Derek were planning to hurt Cameron, she needed to act fast. As much as she hated what Cameron had done to her, she didn't want him dead. "Keep digging," Evelyn said, "and tell Jackson to keep his FBI contact on standby. If Sienna and Derek make a move, I want to know immediately." The next morning, Cameron knocked on Evelyn's door at breakfast. "I talked to my lawyer last night," he said. "If you're willing to sign a confidentiality clause, nothing as restrictive as an NDA, just an agreement not to discuss the financial terms of the divorce publicly, I'll agree to your counteroffer. 20 million, the Soho loft, half the art collection." Evelyn let relief and gratitude flood her features. "Really? Cameron, thank you. That's more generous than I expected." "I want us both to move forward," Cameron said, "and I don't want this to get ugly." Too late, Evelyn thought, but she smiled and said, "Neither do I. When can we finalize everything?" "My lawyer will draw up the new settlement agreement. If you're comfortable with the terms, we could have this finalized within a month." "A month," Evelyn repeated. "That's fast. Is that a problem?" No, I think a clean break might be best for both of us." Evelyn studied him carefully. "Are you seeing someone, Cameron?" "It's okay if you are. I just want to know." For a moment, she thought he might actually tell her the truth, but then he shook his head. "No, I'm not seeing anyone. I just need time to figure out who I am outside of this marriage." The lie was so smooth, so practiced, that Evelyn almost believed he believed it himself. "Okay," she said softly. "Then I'll wait for the settlement papers. And Cameron, thank you for being kind about this." He looked relieved, almost happy. "Of course, you deserve kindness, Eve. You always have." After he left, Evelyn sat alone in the conservatory, surrounded by her orchids, and allowed herself a single moment of grief for the marriage that had died long before Cameron had filed papers. Then she picked up her phone and texted Reese. He agreed. 1 month until the divorce is final. Start the countdown. The game is accelerating, and everyone's about to learn that Evelyn Vaughn isn't playing for second place. Stay tuned. You're going to want to see how this unfolds. Hit that like button and subscribe for part 2 of this revenge masterpiece. 3 weeks into the divorce proceedings, Sienna called Evelyn. "Evelyn, I was hoping we could meet. There's something I need to talk to you about." They met at their usual cafe, but this time Sienna looked nervous. She ordered a coffee she didn't drink and fidgeted with her napkin. "What's wrong?" Evelyn asked, all concern and sympathy. I'm seeing someone," Sienna said finally. "It's new. Well, not that new. We've been together for almost a year, but it's been secret because he's high profile, and he's married." Evelyn's performance was Oscar-worthy. "Oh, Sienna, that's such a difficult situation." "I know, and I swear, I didn't set out to be the other woman, but we connected so deeply, and he promised me he was going to leave his wife. And now he finally is. He filed for divorce a few weeks ago." "And how do you feel about that?" Sienna's eyes filled with tears. Real ones, Evelyn noted. "Interesting. I'm terrified. What if I'm making a mistake? What if he resents me later for breaking up his marriage? What if I'm just a midlife crisis?" Evelyn reached across the table and took Sienna's hand. "Can I tell you something? Something I haven't told anyone." Sienna nodded. "Cameron and I are getting divorced." Sienna's shock was perfectly performed. What? But you two seemed… We seemed fine. But we haven't been fine for a long time. We've grown apart, and as much as it hurts, I think ending things is the right choice for both of us. I'm so sorry, Sienna whispered. Don't be. Actually, talking to you these past few weeks has helped me realize something. Life's too short to stay in a relationship that isn't working just because you're afraid of change. Evelyn squeezed Sienna's hand. So if you love this man, if he makes you happy, don't let fear hold you back. Everyone deserves to be with someone who makes them feel alive. Sienna's tears spilled over. Thank you. I needed to hear that. As Evelyn left the cafe, she called Reese. Sienna just told me about her affair with a high-profile married man. She didn't mention Cameron by name, but she's clearly feeling guilty and looking for permission to pursue him. Which you just gave her. Brilliant. Now she'll push Cameron harder for commitment, which means he'll move faster than he should, which means Derek will see an opportunity to accelerate whatever he's planning. Jackson's team is in position. We're monitoring all of Sienna's communications with Derek. The moment they make a concrete move, we'll know. 1 week later, Cameron proposed to Sienna. He did it at the restaurant where they'd had their first date, with a 5-carat diamond ring that cost more than most people's houses. Sienna posted a tastefully curated photo on Instagram the next morning. Just her hand with the ring, no face, no location tag. But the caption told the story. When you know, you know. The photo got 50,000 likes within an hour. Evelyn saw it while having breakfast with Diane, who grabbed her hand across the table. Are you okay? I'm perfect, Evelyn said calmly. Right on schedule, actually. Because that same morning, Evelyn's divorce from Cameron had been finalized. She was officially single, significantly wealthier than she'd been a month ago, and legally free to tell whatever story she wanted. And in 1 week, the story she was going to tell would destroy everything Cameron thought he'd built with Sienna. Derek Castellano made his first mistake 3 days after the engagement announcement. He was getting impatient. The wedding was scheduled for 3 months out, a tastefully quick ceremony that would avoid accusations of Cameron remarrying too fast while still capitalizing on his emotional vulnerability. But Derek didn't want to wait 3 months. He needed money now. So he approached Sienna with a new plan. Jackson's surveillance team recorded the entire conversation. We move before the wedding, Derek said. They were meeting in Sienna's penthouse, the one Cameron had bought for her, not knowing he was essentially providing the headquarters for his own destruction. We take out a massive insurance policy on Cameron, wait a month, and then stage an accident. Are you insane? Sienna hissed. That's not the plan. The plan was to get married, establish a legitimate claim to his assets, and then… The plans changed. I owe Dimitri $5 million by the end of next month, or he's going to kill me. We don't have time to play the long game anymore. Then you'll have to figure something else out, because I'm not killing Cameron. You won't have to. I'll handle the practical side. You just need to make sure you're his primary beneficiary and that there are no complications afterward. Derek, this is insane. We agreed. I don't care what we agreed. I'm out of time. Derek grabbed Sienna's arm hard enough to make her wince. You do what I tell you, or I'll make sure Cameron finds out about your real past. About Saul Parker, about all of them. How do you think your billionaire fiancé will react when he learns you're a professional con artist? Sienna wrenched her arm free. You threatening me now? I'm reminding you that we're partners, and partners don't get cold feet. After Derek left, Sienna sat alone in the penthouse for over an hour, crying. Jackson's team captured all of it. This changes everything, Reese said when Evelyn, Jackson and Diane gathered to review the surveillance footage. Derek's planning murder. We have to go to the police. Not yet, Evelyn said. Everyone turned to stare at her. Evelyn, the man is planning to kill your ex-husband, Diane said. I know you hate Cameron right now, but I don't want him dead, Evelyn interrupted. But I also don't want Derek arrested before he incriminates himself completely. Right now, that recording could be argued away, two people discussing a hypothetical, or Derek making threats he had no intention of following through on. We need concrete evidence. We need Derek to actually attempt something. So you want to use Cameron as bait, Jackson said slowly. I want to protect Cameron while simultaneously making sure Derek hangs himself, which means we need to warn Cameron without revealing what we know. We need him to be careful without knowing exactly what he's being careful of. And how do you propose we do that? Reese asked. Evelyn smiled. We send him an anonymous warning, something cryptic enough that he can't trace it back to us, but specific enough that he takes it seriously. Something that will make him look more closely at Sienna and potentially discover some truths on his own. The message was delivered to Cameron's private email 3 days later. Your fiancée is not who she claims to be. Ask her about Saul Parker. Ask her about Simone Kowalski. Ask her who Derek Castellano is and why he needs $5 million by next month. Your life may depend on it. Cameron's response was swift and predictable. He hired a private investigator. Within 48 hours, the investigator had uncovered most of Sienna's past. The real estate investors she'd conned, the name changes, the pattern of targeting wealthy men. He also found Derek, including his gambling debts and his connections to some very dangerous people. Cameron confronted Sienna that evening, in her penthouse. Jackson's team, which had been monitoring the apartment with Sienna's unwitting cooperation, they'd installed cameras disguised as a home security system that Derek had gifted her, captured every word. Who the hell is Saul Parker? Cameron demanded, throwing a file on her coffee table. Sienna's face went white. Cameron, I can explain. Can you explain why your real name is Simone Kowalski? Can you explain why you've changed your name 3 times? Can you explain why there's a pattern of wealthy men who've been financially destroyed after getting involved with you? Those men, those situations were complicated. I was young. I made mistakes. Mistakes? You're a con artist. You've been lying to me since the day we met. I love you, Sienna said desperately. Everything I've felt for you, that's real. The rest of it, my past, that's not who I am anymore. You made me want to be better. Cameron stared at her like he'd never seen her before. Who's Derek Castellano? Sienna froze. I don't know who that is. Don't lie to me. I have photos of you meeting with him. I have records of phone calls, text messages. Who is he? He's my ex, from years ago. He's been trying to get back into my life, but I've been avoiding him. Why does he need $5 million? The question hung in the air like a noose. I don't know what you're talking about, Sienna whispered. Cameron pulled out his phone and played a recording. Derek's voice filled the room. I owe Dimitri $5 million by the end of next month, or he's going to kill me. Sienna's legs gave out, and she collapsed onto the couch. He's been bugging your apartment, Cameron said, his voice eerily calm. Someone sent me this recording, along with the warning email, and they sent me something else. They sent me Derek's plan to take out an insurance policy on my life and then stage an accident. Were you part of that plan, Sienna? Or Simone? Or whoever the hell you really are? No, Sienna sobbed. No, I told him no. I refused. Cameron, please, you have to believe me. I didn't want any of this. Derek's dangerous, and he's been threatening me. But I swear, I wasn't going to let him hurt you. How much of our relationship was real? The question was quiet, broken, and for a moment, Evelyn, watching the footage from Reese's office, almost felt sorry for Cameron. Almost. All of it, Sienna cried. I know you won't believe me, but it's the truth. I started this as a job. Derek found you, researched you, set up our meeting. But then I got to know you, and I fell in love with you, for real. That's why I kept pushing Derek away, why I didn't want to go through with any of his plans, because I actually wanted a real life with you. Get out, Cameron said. Cameron, get out of the apartment I bought you. Keep the ring, I don't care. But if I ever see you again, I'm calling the police and pressing charges for fraud, attempted extortion, and conspiracy to commit murder. Do you understand me? Sienna gathered her purse with shaking hands and walked to the door. Then she turned back one last time. I'm sorry, she whispered. For whatever it's worth, I really am sorry. The door closed behind her, and Cameron collapsed into a chair, his head in his hands. Evelyn turned off the footage. That was brutal, Diane said quietly. That was karma, Evelyn corrected. Now, we wait for Derek's next move. Derek's next move came faster than anyone expected. 2 days after Cameron threw Sienna out, Derek showed up at Cameron's office building, demanding to see him. Security tried to remove him, but Derek was too agitated, too desperate. He caused a scene in the lobby, screaming about money owed and promises made, until Cameron, worried about the spectacle, agreed to meet him in a conference room with security present. Jackson's FBI contact, Agent Sarah Martinez, had already obtained a warrant to monitor Derek due to his threats on the recorded conversation. They listened live as the confrontation unfolded. You ruined everything, Derek spat at Cameron. Sienna was supposed to marry you. We had a plan. And you screwed it all up by not letting you murder me for insurance money. Cameron's voice was ice cold. Yeah, I'm real sorry about that. I don't want to kill you. I just need money. $5 million. That's nothing to you. Give me $5 million, and I disappear. You never hear from me or Sienna again. That's extortion. That's survival. You think I want to be here, begging a guy like you for money? I'm desperate, Vaughn. The people I owe don't negotiate. They don't give extensions. They just kill you and everyone you love. So yeah, I'm extorting you. And you're going to pay, because if you don't, I'll make sure every detail of your sordid affair hits every newspaper in New York. I'll destroy your reputation, your business, everything you've built. Cameron leaned back in his chair. You really think I care about bad press? I've survived worse than a tabloid scandal. Have you survived your business partners finding out you've been hiding assets in offshore accounts? Have you survived a forensic audit of every deal you've made in the past 10 years, because I've got evidence of all of it. Sienna was very thorough in documenting your financial activities. She thought she might need leverage someday. Turns out, she was right. Cameron's face went pale. What evidence? Bank records, emails, documents showing how you've been undervaluing properties, shifting money through shell companies, avoiding taxes. Shall I go on? You're bluffing. Try me. Derek pulled out his phone and started typing. One text to the IRS, and your life gets very complicated very fast. Or, you give me 5 million, and all of this disappears. What's it going to be? Cameron was trapped, and he knew it. I need time, he said finally. I can't just produce 5 million in cash overnight. You have 48 hours. After that, I start making calls. Derek stood. And Cameron, if you try to have me arrested, if you go to the police, if you do anything except get me my money, those documents go public automatically. I've already set up a dead man's switch, so don't get creative. He walked out, leaving Cameron sitting alone in the conference room, looking like a man who just realized he'd been playing a game he couldn't win. Evelyn received a call from Agent Martinez an hour later. We have enough to arrest Derek for attempted extortion and conspiracy, but if we move now, he might trigger his dead man's switch. Whatever evidence he has on Cameron could go public. What if Cameron just pays him? Evelyn asked. Then Derek gets away with everything, and he'll probably just come back for more money in 6 months. These guys always do. So, what's your recommendation? We need to disable the dead man's switch before we arrest Derek, which means we need to find out where he's storing those documents and how his failsafe works, and we need to do it in less than 48 hours. Evelyn thought for a moment. What if we give Derek a reason to access those documents? What if we make him think he's won, so he gets sloppy? What do you have in mind? Cameron's going to pay him. Or at least, Cameron's going to make Derek think he's going to pay him. We set up a fake money transfer, arrange a meeting, and while Derek's distracted, your team tracks his digital activity. Once we know where the evidence is stored and how to disable the failsafe, you move in and make the arrest. That's risky. If Derek realizes it's a trap, then we make sure he doesn't realize, Evelyn interrupted. And I know exactly how to keep him distracted. The plan was set in motion the next morning. Cameron, coached by the FBI, and though he didn't know it, by Evelyn through Agent Martinez, sent Derek a message. You win. I'll have the money by tomorrow night. Meet me at Pier 57 warehouse at 10 p.m. Come alone. Derek responded immediately. Smart choice. See you then. While Derek prepared for his payday, Agent Martinez's cyber team worked frantically to track his digital footprint. They discovered that he was using a cloud storage Cerevi with automated triggers. If he didn't check in every 12 hours, the documents would automatically be sent to multiple news outlets and government agencies. We have to disable the automation before we arrest him, Agent Martinez said. Otherwise, those documents go out the moment Derek can't check in from a jail cell. How long will that take? Once we have access to his accounts, maybe 30 minutes, but we need him to log in from a DEV we can monitor. We need his passwords, his authentication codes, everything. Evelyn had an idea. She called Sienna. They met in a park, both women wearing sunglasses despite the overcast sky. Why did you want to see me? Sienna asked, her voice hoarse from crying. Because I know who you are, Evelyn said calmly. I know your real name is Simone Kowalski. I know about Saul Parker and all the others. I know about Derek. And I know that right now you're terrified of what he's going to do next. Sienna stared at her. How do you— I'm Cameron's wife. Ex-wife, Evelyn corrected. Did you really think I wouldn't investigate the woman who was sleeping with my husband? Then why are you talking to me instead of calling the police? Because I don't think you're the villain here. I think you're a Evatim who made some very bad choices and got in too deep with a dangerous man. Evelyn leaned forward. Derek's about to destroy Cameron. And when he does, you'll be implicated too. Conspiracy, fraud, attempted extortion. You'll go to prison, Sienna, unless you help us stop him. How? By getting us access to Derek's accounts. The FBI needs to disable his dead man switch before they arrest him. That means we need his passwords, his DEVs, his authentication codes. Can you get them? Sienna was quiet for a long time. If I do this, what happens to me? Agent Martinez has agreed to offer you immunity in exchange for your cooperation. You testify against Derek, you give them everything they need, and you walk away. You'll have to leave New York, change your identity again, start over somewhere else, but you'll be free. And if I don't help, then you go down with Derek. And trust me, a pretty woman like you, prison will not be kind. Sienna closed her eyes. I loved him once, you know. Derek, before he became this. We were going to be legitimate, start a real consulting business, help brands, do things the right way. But then the debts piled up, and he got desperate, and suddenly we were conning people instead of helping them. I told myself it was temporary, that we'd do one last big score and then get out. But there's always one more, isn't there? Yes, Evelyn said quietly. There is. Okay, Sienna said finally. I'll help you. What do you need me to do? Pier 57 warehouse was abandoned, decrepit, and perfect for an illegal money exchange. Cameron arrived exactly on time, carrying a briefcase that supposedly contained $5 million in bearer bonds. It actually contained meticulously crafted forgeries that would fool anyone who didn't look too closely. Derek was already there, pacing nervously, constantly checking his phone. You came alone? Derek asked. You think I want witnesses to this? Cameron set the briefcase on a rusted metal table. Here's your money. Now delete the evidence. Derek opened the briefcase, examined the bonds, and smiled. See, that wasn't so hard. Now we can all move on with our lives. The evidence, Derek. Right. Derek pulled out his laptop, set it on the table, and began typing. What he didn't know was that Sienna, hidden in an FBI van 3 blocks away, had just given Agent Martinez all of Derek's passwords and authentication codes, and that the moment Derek logged into his cloud storage account, the FBI's cyber team gained access to everything. It's going to take me a few minutes to remove the automation, Derek said, his fingers flying over the keyboard. These triggers are complicated. The warehouse door burst open. FBI, hands up. Derek's head snapped up in shock. He saw the agents, saw Cameron backing away, saw the trap he'd walked into. You son of a bitch, Derek screamed, lunging for his laptop. But Agent Martinez was faster. She tackled him to the ground while other agents secured the laptop and Derek's phone. Derek Castellano, you're under arrest for attempted extortion, fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, and about 15 other charges We'll read to you at the station." Derek fought against the handcuffs, his face twisted with rage. "You're dead, Vaughn. You hear me? You're dead." Cameron said nothing, just watched as Derek was dragged away. Agent Martinez approached him. "Mr. Vaughn, we're going to need you to come with us. We have some questions about the financial documents Derek mentioned." Cameron's face fell. "What?" "The evidence Derek collected on you is real. While we appreciate your cooperation in capturing him, we still have an obligation to investigate potential tax fraud and money laundering. So if you wouldn't mind coming downtown." As Cameron was led away, not arrested, but definitely not free to go, Evelyn watched from a car across the street, a smile playing at her lips. Checkmate. The story exploded across every news outlet within 24 hours. Real estate mogul Cameron Vaughn target of elaborate con. Con artist couple planned to murder billionaire for insurance money. Vaughn development under investigation for financial fraud. Every sordid detail came out. The affair, the proposal, Derek and Sienna's history of conning wealthy men, the murder plot, and most damningly, the evidence of Cameron's shady financial practices. Cameron tried to control the narrative, but it was impossible. The story was too good, too scandalous, too perfectly dramatic. Within a week, several of his business partners had distanced themselves from Vaughn development. Investors were pulling out, projects were being cancelled, and through it all, Evelyn stayed silent. She didn't gloat. She didn't give interviews. She simply released a brief statement through her publicist. "I'm grateful that Mr. Vaughn is safe and that justice is being served. This is a difficult time for everyone involved, and I ask for privacy as we all move forward." She sounded dignified, gracious, like a woman who'd been epitomized by her husband's poor choices, but who was taking the high road. Meanwhile, Reese was systematically dismantling what remained of Cameron's empire. Using the evidence uncovered during the FBI investigation, Reese filed a motion to invalidate the divorce settlement. She argued that Cameron had committed fraud during the divorce proceedings by failing to disclose the full extent of his assets and by using marital funds to support his affair. The judge agreed. The original settlement was voided, and a new one was ordered based on the full financial disclosure that the FBI investigation had forced into the open. When the dust settled, Evelyn walked away with $1.2 billion, not to mention the Hamptons estate, the Soho loft, 60% of the art collection, and full control of the Vaughn Foundation. Cameron was left with enough to live comfortably, but not enough to maintain the empire he'd built. Vaughn Development was sold to a competitor for cents on the dollar. His reputation was destroyed, and he faced years of legal battles over tax evasion and fraud charges. 3 months after Derek's arrest, Evelyn threw a party. It was ostensibly a fundraiser for the newly renamed Evelyn Foundation for Arts Education, but everyone knew it was really a celebration. Evelyn had not just survived her divorce, she'd emerged more powerful than ever. Diane found her on the terrace, looking out over the city. "You did it," Diane said. "You actually did it." "We did it," Evelyn corrected. "I couldn't have done any of this without you, Reese, Jackson, all of you." "What are you going to do now? You've got more money than you could spend in 3 lifetimes. You've got your foundation. You've got your freedom. What's next?" Evelyn smiled. "I'm going to build something. Something that's entirely mine. An art gallery, maybe. Or a publishing house for female artists. Something that gives other women opportunities to tell their stories, to build their own empires, to never have to depend on a man who might betray them. That sounds perfect. And, Evelyn added, her smile turning slightly wicked, I'm going to make sure that every social event, every charity gala, every important gathering in this city includes a reminder of what happens when powerful men think they can discard their wives without consequences. I'm going to be so successful, so visible, so undeniably powerful that Cameron can't go anywhere without being reminded that I won. That's a little vindictive. That's justice. Cameron, for his part, had disappeared from New York society. He'd sold his remaining assets, settled with the IRS, and moved to a modest house in Connecticut. He was alone, humiliated, and broke by his former standards. He'd tried to reach out to Evelyn once, sending a letter apologizing for everything. She'd read it once, then burned it without responding. Some betrayals couldn't be forgiven, no matter how eloquent the apology. As for Sienna, she'd taken the immunity deal and vanished. Last Evelyn heard, she was living under a new name in Oregon, working as a barista and taking night classes in graphic design. She'd sent Evelyn a letter too, a long, rambling explanation of how she'd gotten caught up in Derek's schemes, how she'd genuinely fallen for Cameron, how sorry she was for everything. Evelyn had kept that letter, not because she forgave Sienna, but because it served as a reminder. Everyone makes choices. Some lead to empires, some lead to ruin. And the difference between the two often comes down to knowing when to fight and when to walk away. Evelyn had fought, and she'd won. The Evelyn Vaughn Gallery opened on a crisp autumn evening in Chelsea, in a space that Evelyn had purchased with her own money and renovated to her exact specifications. The opening night featured works by 30 emerging female artists, painters, sculptors, photographers, and mixed media artists who'd been given space to create without compromise. The crowd was impressive: collectors, critics, celebrities, and society figures who'd come to see what Evelyn had built. There was a waiting list for future exhibitions. 3 major publications had already profiled the gallery as the most exciting new art space in New York. Evelyn moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations, discussing the works on display, and feeling more at home in her own skin than she had in years. Near the end of the evening, Jackson Reeves found her. "Beautiful space," he said, "and congratulations. The book is at the top of the bestseller list." He was referring to The Long Con, Inside the Scandal, that shook New York's elite, which had been published 2 weeks earlier and was selling faster than the publisher could print copies. It told the complete story: Cameron's affair, Sienna and Derek's schemes, the FBI investigation, the dramatic arrests, and Evelyn's ultimate triumph. Evelyn had approved every word. "You wrote a hell of a story," Evelyn said. "You lived a hell of a story." Jackson raised his glass. "To winning." "To winning," Evelyn echoed. As they drank, Diane rushed over, her phone in hand. "Eve, you have to see this." She pulled up a news article. The headline read, "Cameron Vaughn selling Connecticut home after foreclosure threat." Evelyn read the article silently. Cameron hadn't been able to keep up with his legal fees and IRS payments. He was losing the last house he owned. Soon, he'd have nothing left but memories of the empire he'd thrown away for a younger woman who'd nearly gotten him killed. "How does it feel?" Diane asked quietly. Evelyn considered the question carefully. She thought about the 20 years she'd given to Cameron, the life they'd built together, the moment she'd opened that folder in the restaurant and realized everything was a lie, the long months of planning, of strategy, of careful manipulation that had led to this moment. "It feels like justice," Evelyn said finally. "Not revenge, justice." And it did. Because Evelyn Vaughn hadn't just survived betrayal, she'd transformed it into power. She'd taken the pain of being discarded and turned it into an empire of her own making. She'd proven that a woman who'd been traded in for a younger model could come back stronger, richer, and more influential than ever. She'd won. But more than that, she'd shown every other woman watching that betrayal didn't have to be the end of the story. It could be the beginning. Evelyn was preparing to leave the gallery when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Hello? Evelyn Vaughn?" "Speaking. My name is Eleanor Price. You don't know me, but I know who you are. I've been following your story in the news, and I think I need your help." "What kind of help?" "My husband is having an affair. I just found out. He's planning to divorce me, and I'm going to lose everything. I signed a prenup when I was young and stupid, and now I'm going to pay for it. But I've heard what you did, how you fought back, and I was wondering if you could tell me, how did you do it? How did you win?" Evelyn smiled slowly. "Mrs. Price," she said, her voice warm but sharp as a blade, "why don't we meet for coffee? I think we have a lot to discuss." Because Evelyn Vaughn had learned the most important lesson of all. The best revenge wasn't just winning for yourself. It was teaching other women how to win too. And she was just getting started. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, make sure you're subscribed to this channel and have notifications turned on. Drop a comment below telling me whose side you are on. Team Evelyn all the way, or did you feel for Cameron by the end? And if you know someone going through a tough divorce, maybe share this video with them. Sometimes knowing you're not alone in the fight makes all the difference. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.